Today on Investigate TV Plus, soldiers forced to choose between family and service.
I begged and pleaded to my commander. I said, I don't know how you can do it, but find me a way to get out of the Army.
We take an in-depth look at the efforts to change parental leave policies and how it's helping thousands of service members.
Plus, hot air balloons offer the promise of a breathtaking view and the thrill of flying in the open air. But are they safe?
If you have people on board, you should definitely be of a certain level of help.
We investigate the number of unregulated rides and what can be done to protect more passengers.
Why should people die for somebody's mistake?
And using experience to empower. A nurse serves as a beacon of hope.
I don't look back, I just look forward.
Her inspiring message about heart health and why every step counts.
I mean, you got to start somewhere, even if it's just, walking to the mailbox or walking around the block.
In-depth stories that inform and inspire. You're watching Investigate TV Plus. It's a well-known mantra in the military: recruit the soldier, retain the family. I'm Lee Zurich.
And I'm Tisha Powell. Now the Department of Defense and its branches are creating new policies and programs to stand behind those words.
From extended parental leave to updated postpartum regulations, both formal and grassroots efforts are making waves across the armed forces.
Reporter Kristen Crowley introduces us to service members who are both benefiting from the changes and inspiring them.
When Sergeant First Class Kent Redmond and his wife Tara became parents for the first time in 2018, they were thrilled.
She's our rainbow baby. It took us 10 years to get her.
But they were also frustrated.
To be honest, 10 days was not enough.
10 days was all the leave Kent was given to take care of his new baby girl and Tara following her C-section.
And that was it.
Yeah.
You weren't going to be able to get any more than that unless you used some other time you had.
Correct.
Yes.
As the non-birthing parent, Kent was considered a secondary caregiver, and military policy allowed him just 2 weeks of paid leave. So despite having served in the Army for more than a decade at the time, he had to use his ordinary leave to get more time with his family. But fast forward a few years, baby number 3 was on the way for Kent and Tara.
Yay, your baby brother's here.
And a major policy change was implemented just in time for their newest addition.
Did you ever think 12 weeks paternity leave was ever going to happen?
No.
I was shocked.
Those 12 weeks of paid leave apply to all parents who serve as of January 2023. Part of the Department of Defense's expanded military parental leave program.
It was refreshing to know that I had support.
The program was mandated across all DoD branches and includes convalescent leave for birthing parents for as long as they need to recover. Kent says it was long overdue. He's seen how soldiers have been forced to choose between their families and their careers.
They got out because they got pregnant, because they didn't want to deal with not having the time with their child.
According to a 2020 report from the Government Accountability Office, family planning was one of 6 reasons women cited when deciding to leave the service.
I begged and pleaded to my commander. I said, I don't know how you can do it, but find me a way to get out of the Army.
Staff Sergeant Nicole Jeffrey tried getting out after a traumatic miscarriage in 2016. She was only granted 2 days of convalescent leave to heal and grieve.
How do you express what that feels like? Having a miscarriage and being told you get 2 days.
It was horrible. It was kind of a slap in the face, really.
But Nicole didn't run from her problem. After getting pregnant again a few years later, she decided to do something about it. She launched a grassroots movement in 2020 that sparked long-awaited postpartum change in the Army.
I never expected it to go where it has.
And unlike the military-wide parental leave program, this change did not start with a formal policy. It started with an online community she created, the Army Mom Life, which now has thousands of members.
It was basically just essentially supposed to be this group where women could go to who were in the Army, whether they were pregnant, postpartum, or they had children of any age, and they could go to and just ask questions.
In 2021, members were asked a simple one: what policy changes are needed and why?
Within, I would say, a couple of hours, we had over 400 to 600 comments.
The responses were organized into a wish list of sorts that Nicole shared with senior leadership. And a year later, the Army's Parenthood, Pregnancy, and Postpartum Directive was born, which today impacts more than 400,000 parents within the service.
I don't think I've ever seen a change come this fast.
It updated 6 existing policies and established 6 new ones, making updates like physical testing exemptions and standardized pregnancy loss leave.
We have the ability to listen to our soldiers.
Now retired Sergeant Major of the Army Michael Grinston remembers that day in 2021 when Nicole reached out about the changes. The 36-year veteran says he's seen some of the greatest military innovations come from service members, this one included.
The way we look at families in the Army has just really shifted. In 1987, it was like if the Army wanted you to have a family, they would have issued you one. And we don't say that anymore.
But organizational impacts from the Army mom life didn't stop with one new directive. Leaders are taking Nicole's vision a step further with the newly created Women's Initiatives team.
We saw how effective a bunch of motivated service members and spouses could be, and we thought that this would be a formal way to marshal that energy into something that could continue to provide the feedback that we need from the force.
Yvette Busico, Principal Deputy Assistant Secretary of the Army for Manpower and Reserve Affairs, says the group will focus on improving the experiences of Army women.
We are focused on providing for families through our policies, through our programs.
The Redmonds say they're excited about the progress being made in the Army and beyond.
Does this make it easier to stay in the military for policies like this and you feel more supported?
I do, yeah.
For Kent, it's motivation to continue to serve.
I'm happy with what the military has done in the past few years, and it is one of the reasons that I am still in the military.
While the Department of Defense declined to comment on camera, they sent us a statement saying, in part, the department is committed to taking care of our service members and their families, and that includes providing new parents with crucial time to bond with a new child. We are proud to offer this benefit as we work to retain our warfighters, who are the heart of our national defense. In February 2024, the DoD released its biennial survey of active duty spouses, seeking updated feedback on how to best address the needs of military families.
Still to come, a living monument to man's quest among the stars. How tiny celestial travelers took root on Earth and inspired generations.
Plus, they can take you to new heights, but deadly crashes expose a lack of oversight.
Well, what we don't want to have happen is to need to have more accidents.
Up next, the push for more regulations in an industry some say has been flying under the radar for far too long. You can watch Investigate TV Plus anytime online. Just subscribe to our YouTube channel at Investigate TV. You can catch stories and full episodes.
2 centuries ago, before airplanes, balloons first floated people into the sky.
While our methods of flying have since changed, hot air balloons still offer the opportunity for adventure. But how safe are they?
For nearly 2 decades, the National Transportation Safety Board has been calling for more oversight of hot air balloons and their pilots. But the NTSB can only investigate crashes and recommend changes.
Investigative reporter Amy Cutler has an in-depth look at who has to act to add more policies that could protect riders.
They often start at dawn, filling balloons with air, preparing for this moment when they take flight. In photos from the basket, it's easy to see the appeal. For a few $100, the view is pretty amazing. That's how Rosemarie Gregorio's ride in Marana started. Her daughter bought tickets for her parents as an anniversary gift. The ride quickly turned tragic.
We hit some cables, electrical cables, and the balloon caught fire. and I passed out. The next thing I remember, the balloon was dragging on the ground.
She calls her husband Thomas the love of her life. 11 people were on that balloon that April day in 2005. The NTSB's final report found the basket hit several boulders along the side of mountains. Thomas was killed. Rosemary, one of 3 others, seriously injured.
My whole body was black and blue for months.
This crash was one of 30 the NTSB investigated in Arizona since 2000. This close call from December in North Phoenix. The balloon with 9 people on board came down on a light pole. The most recent accident was in Eloy back in January. 4 people were killed, including the pilot. The sole survivor suffered critical injuries.
The standards are, I'm not going to say they're unsafe, but they're a little lower than some of the other areas out there.
Anthony Brickhouse, an aviation expert, explains the NTSB has been calling for more oversight of this industry for nearly 2 decades. Hot air balloons fall under Part 91, what's known as revenue passenger carrying operations. But it took until 2016, the deadliest hot air balloon crash in U.S. history, to really put the spotlight on the industry. 16 people, including the pilot, were killed in Lockhart, Texas, when the balloon struck power lines. Now, the pilot, Skip Nichols, had served 2 prison sentences for drug and alcohol-related offenses and had several prescription drugs in his system at the time of the crash. The NTSB was so concerned, they commissioned this report on the issue. It came out in 2021. It recommends closing loopholes, developing national safety standards, and a database for all of these operators. Yet to date, only one recommendation from the report on the Lockhart crash has been adopted. It requires balloon pilots to have additional medical clearance, or what's known as a second-class medical.
If you have people on board, you should definitely be of a certain level of help.
We found records that show the pilot in the Eloy crash did have a medical certification. It's a move the Balloon Federation of America, or BFA, a trade group that advocates for the ballooning industry, remains opposed to.
We have people that have been flying safely for 20, 30 years, 40 years. But now they're in their 50s and 60s in some cases, and they have to go for the very first time to try to get an FAA second-class medical. And that's not an easy process.
They say more regulation isn't the answer.
You cannot mandate attitude. You cannot mandate decision and judgment and decision-making process.
What do you think it'll take to finally make the FAA act on this?
Well, what we don't want to have happen is to need to have more accidents.
Why should people die for somebody's mistake that could probably be corrected?
We reached out to the FAA. They pointed us to their response to the NTSB's recommendations back in 2022, saying they'd conducted more than 7,000 surveillance inspections, and about 480 of them resulted in follow-up activity, noting it fulfills the requirements and intent of their safety recommendation. If taking a hot air balloon ride is on your bucket list, FAA data shows the vast majority of their inspections happen at festivals or shows rather than at an individual location. With more people attending, there's more oversight.
Coming up, an experiment from one of NASA's first missions to the moon still thrives here on Earth, where you can see trees that reached new heights 50 years ago.
How is it going to be different than a normal tree that hadn't been to outer space?
But first, she crossed countless finish lines, but her biggest victories can't be measured in miles.
You know, you leave your hands to God and just say it is what it is.
How several brushes with death have inspired a nurse to help others improve their heart health. You can watch Investigate TV Plus anytime, streaming online. Get the app for Roku, Amazon Fire TV, and Apple TV. They're free to download.
Heart disease is the leading cause of death for men and women in the U.S.
The CDC reports in 2021, nearly 700,000 people died from it. That's 1 in every 5 deaths. But experts say there are steps you can take to help prevent heart disease and its complications.
Reporter Nicole Versansky has insight from a nurse in Ohio who's using her own experience to inspire healthy habits.
You'd never know it watching Linda Turner cross finish line after finish line, walking, hiking.
I love it. I love being outside. I love going.
But when the cardiac nurse talks to her patients at Fairview Hospital about heart issues, she understands their struggles. She's walked in their shoes.
It's not easy. It obviously is not easy.
Linda was born with a congenital heart defect. By age 8, she had her first open heart surgery to fix her aortic valve.
I do remember at 8 that I couldn't ride my bike. I was short of breath. That I remember.
Nearly 35 years later, pregnant with her second child, Linda went into heart failure. She needed another open heart surgery. Recovery for a young mom wasn't easy.
So, I had babies. I had a 3-year-old and an infant.
Fast forward 10 years, right before Christmas, and Linda found herself in a familiar place, having a third open heart surgery.
You leave your hands to God and just say it is what it is.
But those experiences have energized Linda, motivated her to keep moving for her heart health.
As a nurse, you just know you have to be active, so.
It also drives her passion for educating others. At least once a week now, she's teaching CPR or running a class on the importance of heart health.
Menopause and heart health, and 15 older heart health, and just COVID and heart health.
And with everything that you've gone through, you're an expert in so many ways as a patient, as a nurse. What is the message when you go out and you do these education seminars? What is the message you really try to get to people?
If you can make one change involving your heart, you got to start somewhere, even if it's just walking to the mailbox or walking around the block, and just start slow.
Learn CPR. That's Linda's other big message.
And if you're doing CPR before the EMS arrives, then you have a better chance of survival. And we see that all the time in our cath lab.
Do you ever look back though and think, wow, how far you've come?
I don't look back, I just look forward. I haven't really looked back.
Wow, 3 open heart surgeries. She's overcome so much and inspiring so many.
Yeah, I love her message to people. Some great lessons for all of us, for sure. All right, a tree stretches skyward as a testament to one of humanity's greatest adventures, missions to the moon.
The chief of the Forest Service asked him, "Would you take these seeds to outer space?" And they all thought it was a worthwhile experiment.
We examine how seeds that took a trip to space compared to their earthbound kin. More than a half-century ago, astronauts carried a canister of seeds on a round trip to the moon.
And one of those seeds is now thriving in a Louisiana forest.
Reporter Dave McNamara has an up-close look at the state's only moon tree.
When Apollo 14 launched toward the moon more than 50 years ago, one of the astronauts on board, Stuart Roosa, carried a container of several hundred seeds. It was part of an experiment to see if weightless space travel impacted the seeds from several common types of trees. While astronauts Alan Shepard and Ed Mitchell walked on the lunar surface, Roosa orbited overhead in the command module. His seeds made 34 loops around the moon over nearly 3 days before the mission returned to Earth. After the space voyage, the moon seeds were sent around the world for planting. One of them, a loblolly pine, was planted in central Louisiana in the Kisatchie National Forest.
Been to outer space?
And for the last half-century, this moon tree appears to have thrived in this pine forest.
Being that this was a research area, and then it just was watched over and measured over the years by the scientists and technicians that worked here, just to make sure that how is it going to be different than a normal tree that hadn't been to outer space.
A second control tree was planted alongside the moon tree. But as the trees grew, researchers realized that somehow the control tree wasn't a loblolly pine, but rather a shortleaf pine. So that hampered scientific comparisons.
From what you know about loblolly pines, does this look like a 50-year-old loblolly should look?
Some people see this tree and they think, well, that looks different than most normal pines. Well, what it is this tree was planted in a very open area. And most trees, no matter what their species are, will branch out. When there's plenty of sunlight, they grow out.
Astronaut Rusa had a special connection to forestry. Before joining the space program, he was a fire jumper for the Forest Service.
The chief of the Forest Service asked him, could you take these seeds to outer space? And they all thought it was a worthwhile experiment, so yeah.
This loblolly pine is one of 3 moon trees planted in Louisiana back in the 70s. The other 2 were in New Orleans and were lost to Hurricane Katrina.
You can see that right in here. That's what that's the seed wing.
There is no telling how many other descendants of the original moon tree may have sprouted nearby.
What they found out is the tree is no different than any other pine tree. Going out in outer space as a seed did not affect the physiology or any of the biology of the tree.
But it's still a curiosity. You can drive down this Forest Service road in the Kisatchie and see a moon tree, a tall pine that has a connection that extends far beyond the planet Earth.
And you can find moon trees at parks, universities, and NASA centers in 40 different states. Trees were also given to Brazil, Switzerland, and Japan. That's it for us on Investigate TV Plus. I'm Lee Zuring.
And I'm T. Chappelle. Thanks for watching. Next time on Investigate TV Plus, in all 50 states, you can find some uninvited guests.
They like to nest in fruit trees, so when you pick a fruit, the ants will rain down on top of you.
An in-depth look at the cost of invasive species and the work being done to protect our environment.